Imagine building a life in a new country, finding work, enrolling your kids in school, and slowly becoming part of a new community. For many immigrants, this journey is filled with hope, determination, and the dream of a better future. Every day, they navigate unfamiliar systems, learn a new language, and work hard to provide stability for their families. They celebrate milestones, make new friends, and contribute to the neighborhoods they now call home. But then, imagine that suddenly, without warning, you're told you have to leave everything behind. The life you've built, the friends you've made, and the sense of belonging you've worked so hard for, all at risk of being taken away in an instant. This is now the reality for about 500,000 immigrants in the U.S. from Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. These are people who have fled instability, violence, or economic hardship, seeking safety and opportunity in America. They were living here under a special permission called humanitarian parole, a temporary status that allowed them to stay and work legally. But now that protection is ending, leaving their futures uncertain. The U.S. government's decision has created a wave of fear and uncertainty for families nationwide. Many are unsure where to turn for help, and legal aid organizations are overwhelmed with requests for guidance. These immigrants followed the rules, applied from their home countries, and were granted temporary permission to live and work in the U.S. They paid taxes, contributed to the economy, and became essential members of their communities. Now, their lives have been thrown into chaos. Many face the heartbreaking prospect of being separated from loved ones, losing jobs, and returning to countries where their safety is not guaranteed. There is no clear path forward, and the uncertainty is overwhelming. Supporters of the move say it's about enforcing immigration laws and maintaining border integrity. They argue that clear rules are necessary to manage who enters and stays in the country. Critics, however, argue that the decision is cruel, especially given the ongoing crises in these countries. They point to the many ways these immigrants have enriched American society, from working in essential jobs to supporting local businesses and volunteering in their communities. In this video, we'll break down what's happening, why the humanitarian parole program was created in the first place, and the reasons behind its sudden end. We'll explore the impact on families and communities across the country. We'll also look at the policy's journey through different presidential administrations and the courts, tracing how immigration laws have changed over time and what this means for the future. Most importantly, we'll hear directly from the people at the heart of this story, the immigrants whose lives are being upended, and the advocates fighting for their right to stay. Their voices will help us understand the true impact of this new immigration order. The CHNV parole program, named for Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, was launched in early 2023 as a response to mounting border challenges. With record numbers of migrants arriving at the U.S. southern border, the government sought new ways to manage the flow and provide safer, more orderly options for those fleeing hardship. The program allowed up to 30,000 people per month from these 4 countries to apply for 2 years of legal stay and work authorization in the United States. For many, this was a rare opportunity to escape political turmoil, economic collapse, and violence at home. And to reunite with loved ones already in the U.S., applicants needed a U.S. sponsor, someone willing to support them financially and help them adjust to life in a new country. They also had to pass strict security checks, including background screenings and biometric data collection, and were required to apply from their home countries rather than making the dangerous journey to the border. The goal was clear: discourage risky and often deadly border crossings by offering a legal, safe alternative for those in desperate need. For thousands, the program became a lifeline, a chance to escape instability, violence, and poverty, and to start anew in a place of safety and hope. The U.S. government viewed it as a way to regain control over migration, reduce chaos at the border, and ease pressure on overwhelmed resources and personnel. But the program was always meant to be temporary. Parole status does not lead to permanent residency or citizenship, leaving many in a state of uncertainty. Many participants and advocates hope for a more permanent solution, but the recent order to leave has abruptly ended those hopes, leaving families anxious and afraid for their future. Now families who have built new lives, found jobs, and sent their children to school in the U.S. must prepare to return to the uncertainty and dangers they once fled. The end of the CHNV parole program marks not just the closure of a policy, but the loss of what was once a beacon of hope and safety for thousands seeking a better life. Since January 2023, about 500,000 people entered the U.S. legally through the CHNV program. Venezuelans made up the largest group, followed by Haitians, Cubans, and Nicaraguans. The program's success was clear border crossings from these countries dropped by over 90%. Parolees filled jobs in industries with labor shortages, paid taxes, and contributed to local economies. Their departure will leave a void in the workforce and disrupt communities. States like Florida, Texas, and New York will feel the impact most. The statistics now highlight not just a policy's success but the scale of the disruption ahead. The question is no longer how many were helped, but what happens to them now. The end of CHNV is a turning point for both immigrants and the communities they joined. Humanitarian parole has long been part of U.S. immigration law, used by presidents from both parties in times of crisis. The CHNV program was one of the largest uses of this authority, but it quickly became a political flashpoint. The Trump administration sought to restrict parole, arguing it bypassed Congress. Republican-led states sued to block CHNV, claiming it overstepped executive power and burdened state resources. The legal battle went to the Supreme Court, which ruled the program exceeded the executive's authority. The court said parole is for individuals, not large groups. This decision forced the administration to end the program. Now, 500,000 people who entered legally are being ordered to leave. The ruling has reshaped the landscape for humanitarian immigration. For thousands of immigrant families, the news arrived not with a knock at the door, but quietly. Official letters from USCIS slipped into mailboxes stating their parole would not be renewed. The words on the page were cold and final, shattering the fragile sense of security they had built. The shock was immediate and overwhelming. Hopes for an extension vanished overnight, replaced by fear and disbelief. Many had clung to the possibility of staying, only to have it taken away in an instant. Suddenly, families found themselves in legal limbo, work permits expiring, jobs lost, and plans for the future put on indefinite hold. The stability they had worked so hard to achieve was slipping through their fingers, leaving them with more questions than answers. Many are now forced to sell cherished belongings, close bank accounts, and say painful goodbyes to neighbors and friends. The communities they've built over months or years are being left behind, along with dreams of a better life. The emotional toll is immense, especially for children who have grown up feeling at home in the U.S. For them, leaving means losing friends, teachers, and the only world they truly know. Parents are faced with impossible choices: uproot their children to an uncertain future, or risk separation by staying behind. Every conversation at the kitchen table is heavy with worry and heartbreak. Most families have little money left to finance a return. Years of hard work have been spent on rent, food, and trying to build a new life. Now they must scrape together what little they have to start over yet again. The prospect of going back is terrifying. It means facing the same dangers and instability they once fled: gang violence in Haiti, political repression in Cuba, economic crises in Venezuela and Nicaragua. For many, returning is not just a setback, but a risk to their very lives. The order to leave isn't just a bureaucratic notice, it's a return to fear, uncertainty, and the unknown. It's a reminder that safety and hope can be taken away in a moment. For many, it feels like losing everything they've worked for: their homes, their communities, and their sense of belonging. The life they built is being dismantled piece by piece. The sense of loss is profound, and the path forward is filled with anxiety and doubt. Every step away from their home in America is a step into the unknown. The reality is harsh. The American dream, once a beacon of hope, has become a nightmare for thousands. For these families, the promise of a better life has been replaced by heartbreak and uncertainty, leaving them to wonder if they will ever find a place to truly call home again. The end of CHNV has sparked fierce debate. Supporters say it's about upholding the law. Temporary parole should mean temporary. They argue that letting people stay undermines the legal immigration system and strains public resources. National security and job competition are also concerns for some. Critics, however, call the decision inhumane, given the crises in the affected countries. They argue the U.S. has a moral obligation to protect vulnerable people, and that these immigrants are vital to local economies. Forcing them to leave would hurt communities and create labor shortages. The debate is a clash between legal order and human compassion. At its core, It's about what kind of country the US wants to be. To grasp the impact, listen to those affected. A Haitian family in Miami fled gang violence, found safety in work, and now faces returning to chaos. A Cuban doctor, finally able to pursue her profession, must abandon her dreams and return to repression. A Nicaraguan student escaped political persecution, built a new life, and now faces danger if forced back. A Venezuelan family, who sacrificed everything for stability, now faces hyperinflation and shortages again. For each, the order to leave means more than relocation. It's a loss of safety, opportunity, and hope. These stories reveal the human cost behind the headlines. The journey to the US was one of hope. The journey back is one of fear. Families are being forced to undo years of progress. The sense of despair is overwhelming. These are not just statistics, they are lives upended. Their voices remind us what's truly at stake. The departure of 500,000 people will ripple through American communities. Cities like Miami, Houston, and New York will feel the loss in their economies. Empty apartments, struggling businesses, and labor shortages. The social fabric will be torn as neighbors, friends, and classmates are forced to leave. Schools will lose students and funding, disrupting classrooms and relationships. The decision sends a message to other immigrants. Legal pathways can vanish overnight. This could push more people toward dangerous, irregular migration. The abrupt end of CHNV may undermine future efforts to manage migration. Trust in U.S. immigration promises is shaken. The consequences will be felt for years, both locally and nationally. The story isn't just about immigrants, it's about the communities they leave behind. With the deadline looming, most affected immigrants face tough choices. Many will try to comply and return home, despite the risks and costs. Some will seek asylum, but the system is backlogged and success is uncertain. Others may look for work or family visas, but those options are limited and complex. For most, there's no clear path to stay. Advocacy groups are pushing Congress for a solution, but political divisions make new laws unlikely. The outcome of future elections could change everything, or nothing. For now, families wait, hoping for a miracle while preparing for the worst. The next few months will decide their fate. The story of CHNV is still being written. What happens next will shape lives and U.S. immigration policy for years to come.